The docking clamps shrieked as the Zinthari warship tore through the hull of the diplomatic vessel. Alarms screamed. Oxygen hissed into the void. Commander Jake Morrison grabbed his wife's arm and shoved her behind a bulkhead as plasma fire erupted down the corridor. "Stay down, Vela," he said. Queen Vela of the Korvath Empire pressed her silver-scaled hand against his chest. Her violet eyes blazed with royal fury. "I will not hide while my guards die for us. Your guards are already dead." Jake pulled his sidearm and checked the charge. 50%. Not enough. Never enough. The marriage had been a political arrangement. 3 months ago, a treaty sealed in ceremony and witnessed by a dozen alien species. The human delegation had offered their best soldier. The Korvath had offered their queen. Peace between two desperate civilizations hanging by a thread. The Zinthari had other plans. Heavy footsteps echoed closer. Vela's hand found Jake's shoulder. "They will capture me, execute you. This was always going to happen. Not today." Jake moved to the edge of the bulkhead and fired twice. The first Zinthari soldier dropped. The second ducked back. He counted 4 heartbeats and rolled out, putting 2 rounds through the wall where the alien crouched, screaming. Then silence. "How did you—" Thermal imaging contact lens. Military grade. Jake ejected the spent cell and slammed in his last one. "We need to reach the escape pods. The corridor is blocked." "Then we make a new corridor." Vela stared at him. They had shared quarters for 3 months. Shared meals. Shared silence. She knew his service record. Knew he had survived the Proxima campaign. But she had never seen him fight. "You are afraid," she said. "Terrified." Jake smiled without humor. "That is what keeps me alive." The ship lurched. Gravity fluctuated. Somewhere deep in the vessel, the reactor was failing. They had minutes, maybe less. Jake grabbed a plasma cutter from the emergency locker and began carving through the deck plating. Sparks flew. Molten metal dripped. Vela watched his hands move with absolute precision. No hesitation. No wasted motion. "You have done this before." 17 times. The metal gave way. He kicked the section free and dropped through the hole into the maintenance shaft below. "Come on." Vela followed. Her royal gown caught on jagged edges, but she tore it free without complaint. They landed in darkness. Jake activated a chem light and tossed it ahead. "Josh Dow." The shaft stretched 50 meters. At the end, an access hatch. Beyond that, the pod bay. Footsteps above them. Shouting in Synthari. Then something metallic clattered through the hole. Grenade. Jake grabbed Vela and ran. The explosion tore through the maintenance shaft behind them. The shockwave lifted Jake and Vela off their feet and hurled them forward. They hit the deck hard. Jake's ears rang. Blood trickled from Vela's temple where her head had struck metal. He hauled her upright. "Can you run?" She nodded. Her legs trembled but held. They reached the access hatch. Jake spun the wheel and kicked it open. The pod bay stretched before them. Empty launch tubes gaped like missing teeth. Most of the pods were gone. Deployed during the initial attack or destroyed in the fighting. One remained. Jake sprinted across the bay with Vela at his side. Behind them, Zinthari soldiers poured through the hatch. Plasma bolts sizzled past. One struck a support beam. Metal vaporized. Another hit the deck at Jake's feet, and he leaped over the molten crater without breaking stride. They reached the pod. Jake slammed the access panel on the door, hissed open. "Get in!" Vela climbed inside. Jake turned and fired his remaining rounds at the advancing soldiers. 3 dropped. 4 more took their place. His weapon clicked empty. He dove into the pod and hit the emergency launch. Nothing happened. No. Jake's fingers flew across the control panel. Red indicators blinked. The launch mechanism was offline. Manual override required from outside the pod. Vela read the display and her face went pale. You cannot. Someone has to pull the lever. Then we both die here. Jake looked at her, really looked at her. 3 months of careful distance, 3 months of duty and obligation, 3 months of wondering what their marriage actually meant. No, he said, you are going to live. He moved toward the door, but Vela grabbed his arm with strength that surprised him. Her claws dug into his sleeve. I am a queen. I do not abandon those who serve me. And I am your husband. Jake pulled free gently. That means something to humans, even in a political marriage. Jake, tell Earth what happened here. Tell them the Zinthari broke the accord. He stepped toward the door. Tell them to send everything. Vela's hand shot out and caught his wrist, not restraining. Holding. Her violet eyes locked with his. If you walk out that door, I will find a way to bring you back. I swear it on my crown and my blood. Then I will see you again, my queen. Jake opened the door and rolled out. Plasma fire erupted immediately. He felt one bolt graze his shoulder, another hit his leg. He ignored the pain and ran for the manual override lever mounted on the bulkhead. The Zinthari were 30 meters away. 20. 10. Jake reached the lever and pulled. The pod's engines ignited. Emergency clamps released. The small craft shot through the launch tube and into open space. Through the pod's rear camera, Vela watched Jake turn to face the advancing soldiers. He had no weapon, no cover, no chance. But he was smiling. The first Zinthari raised its rifle. Jake moved, not away, toward. He closed the distance in 3 strides and drove his fist into the alien's throat. The creature made a choking sound and collapsed. Jake caught the falling rifle and fired without aiming. 2 more soldiers dropped. The remaining Zinthari opened fire. Jake twisted, and the bolts passed through empty air where he had stood a heartbeat before. He fired again. Again, moving between shots like water flowing around stones. Every movement economy, every action purpose. Vela pressed her hand against the pod's viewport. She had read the human combat reports, had studied their tactics during the war negotiations. But reading was not the same as witnessing. This was not human. This was something else. Jake dropped the rifle when it ran dry and picked up a plasma blade from a fallen soldier. The remaining Zinthari rushed him as a group. Tactical error. He moved through them like a scythe through grain. The blade hummed and sang. Alien blood painted the deck. When it was over, Jake stood alone among the bodies. His leg wound bled freely. His shoulder hung at an odd angle. But he was standing. He looked up at the fleeing pod, at Vela's face in the small window, and he raised his hand. Not a wave, a promise. Then the Zinthari warship's main cannon charged. Energy built. The air shimmered with heat. The pod's automated thrusters fired and carried Vela beyond the blast radius. The last thing she saw was Jake Morrison turning to face the charging weapon. Then white light consumed everything. The escape pod tumbled through the debris field. Vela's hands trembled on the controls as she stabilized the craft. Behind her, the diplomatic vessel was gone. Vaporized. Nothing remained but expanding gas and scattered metal. Jake was dead. The pod's communication array crackled to life. Dozens of voices. Zinthari battle language. They were searching the debris, hunting for survivors. Vela killed the transponder and went dark. The pod drifted silent among the wreckage. A Zinthari patrol ship passed within 200 meters. Its searchlights swept across the debris field. She held her breath. It moved on. Hours crawled past. The pod's life support hummed quietly. Vela sat in the pilot's seat and stared at the spot where the diplomatic vessel had been, where her husband had made his final stand. She had known him for 3 months, had shared quarters with a stranger, a human warrior offered up like a chess piece in negotiations. She had expected duty, perhaps respect, eventually tolerance. She had not expected him to die for her. The communication array chirped. A new signal. This one different. Human encryption. Vela's hand snapped to the controls. This is Corvus Queen Vela. I am alone in an escape pod. Coordinates attached. Requesting immediate extraction. Static. Then a voice. Female, clipped and professional. Queen Vela, this is Captain Lauren Hayes of the Earth Defense Vessel Midway. We have your position. Stay put. Extraction team launching in 2 minutes. The Zinthari are searching. We see them. They won't be a problem. The channel closed. Vela pulled up the pod's external sensors. At first she saw nothing. Then the stars shifted. The Midway decloaked 3 kilometers away. The human warship was twice the size of the Zinthari patrol vessels. Its hull bristled with weapons that had been illegal under the treaty accords, the same accords the Zinthari had just shattered. The patrol ships turned to engage. They never got the chance. The Midway's railguns spoke. Tungsten rounds traveling at relativistic speeds turned the nearest patrol ship into a cloud of shrapnel. The second vessel attempted evasive maneuvers. Missiles from the Midway's launch tubes chased it down and detonated. The third ship managed to return fire before a plasma lance cut it in half. 17 seconds. 3 ships destroyed. A human shuttle emerged from the Midway's bay and burned toward Vela's pod. It matched velocity and docked. The airlock cycled. 2 Marines in combat armor entered. One carried a medical kit. The other swept the pod with a rifle. Your Majesty, the first Marine removed her helmet. Young face, hard eyes. Are you injured? Surface wounds only. Vela stood. Her legs were steadier now. Commander Morrison, his body, was vaporized in the blast. We know. Captain Hayes wants to speak with you immediately. They brought her aboard the shuttle. Through the window, Vela watched the Midway grow larger. The human warship was already moving, already hunting. The shuttle docked. More Marines waited. They escorted Vela through corridors lined with weaponry. Soldiers moved with purpose. No panic. No confusion. This was a crew that had been waiting for an excuse. Captain Hayes stood in the command center. Tall woman, gray hair pulled back tight. She turned as Vela entered, and her expression was granite. Queen Vela, my condolences for Commander Morrison. He saved my life. That was his mission. Hayes gestured to the tactical display. Red icons swarmed across the screen. Zinthari ships, dozens of them. This was a coordinated attack. They hit 6 diplomatic vessels simultaneously, killed every human negotiator. Every alien delegate who supported the treaty. Vela's blood went cold. They are declaring war. They already did. 3 hours ago, Zinthari forces are moving on the border colonies. Hayes pulled up another screen, but they made a mistake. What mistake? Hayes tapped a control. Footage appeared. Grainy, shot from a surviving security camera on the diplomatic vessel. It showed Jake Morrison in the pod bay, showed him pulling the launch lever, showed him facing the Zinthari soldiers. But it also showed what happened next. After Vela's pod launched, the footage continued. Jake fought, killed, stood among the bodies. Then the Zinthari warship's main cannon charged, and Jake moved. He sprinted across the pod bay as the energy weapon fired. The blast tore through the vessel's hull. Jake leaped through the breach into open space. No suit, no protection. The footage switched to external sensors, showed Jake's body tumbling through the void, showed the vacuum freezing the blood from his wounds, showed him drifting toward a piece of debris, then showed something impossible. Jake grabbed the debris, used it as a platform, pushed off toward a drifting Xinthari fighter that had been damaged in the initial attack. He reached it, pulled himself inside through a hull breach. The fighter's engines ignited. Hayes froze the footage. That was 6 hours ago. Commander Morrison is alive, and he just stole a Xinthari fighter. Vela stared at the screen, at the impossible image of her husband surviving in hard vacuum. Moving with purpose, escaping. How long can a human survive exposure to space? 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes before brain death. Hayes smiled without warmth. But Jake Morrison was part of a program we do not discuss in treaty negotiations. Project Titan. Genetic augmentation, cybernetic enhancement, the kind of modifications that make a man into something more. You sent me an augmented soldier and called it a political marriage. We sent you our best operative and made him your husband. When the Xinthari broke the treaty, we knew you would need protection. Hayes leaned forward. What we did not anticipate was how far he would go to keep you alive. The tactical display updated. A new signal appeared. A Xinthari fighter moving away from the debris field. Moving fast. Too fast. Hayes activated the communications. Commander Morrison? This is Captain Hayes. Respond. Static. Then a voice. Rough. Strained, but unmistakably Jake. Captain, I have acquired a craft. Requesting nav data to the nearest Xinthari command ship. Hayes glanced at Vela. Commander, your primary mission is complete. Queen Vela is safe. Return to the Midway for extraction and medical. Negative. Jake's voice carried an edge that made Vela's skin prickle. They tried to kill my wife. I am going to explain why that was a poor decision. Hayes closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her expression had shifted. Not disapproval, understanding. Commander, you are operating a stolen enemy fighter with critical injuries and no support. Even with your augmentations, this is a suicide run. Then I will make it count. Jake's breathing was labored. Vela could hear the pain beneath the words. Send me the coordinates, Captain. That is an order from a superior officer. Hayes smiled grimly. You have not held rank over me in 3 years, Jake. Then send them as a favor between old friends. The captain pulled up a star chart. Her fingers hovered over the controls. Then she tapped in a sequence and transmitted. Xinthari Command Carrier Dreadmaw, 16 light minutes from your position. It is coordinating the entire assault fleet. Received. Morrison out. The signal cut. On the tactical display, the stolen fighter's trajectory shifted, burning hard toward the Dreadmaw's last known position. Vela stepped forward. You are letting him go to his death. I am letting him do what he was designed to do. Hayes turned to face her. You married a weapon, Your Majesty. The kindest weapon humanity ever built, but a weapon nonetheless. And someone just gave him a reason to stop being kind. I order you to retrieve him. You have no authority on this vessel. Vela's hand dropped to where her ceremonial blade should have been. Gone. Lost in the escape, she settled for stepping into Hayes's personal space. Eye to eye, queen to captain. He is my husband. I will not lose him twice in one day. Hayes held her gaze, then nodded slowly. Elm, plot an intercept course with Commander Morrison's fighter. best possible speed. The Midway's engines roared to life. The massive warship turned and accelerated, but even at full burn, the numbers on the tactical display were clear. They would not reach Jake before he reached the Dreadmaw. Vela watched the displays, watched her husband's stolen fighter race toward impossible odds. What did they do to him, this Project Titan? Hayes was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke. They made him faster, stronger, gave him the ability to survive things that would kill normal humans, enhanced his reflexes to superhuman levels, implanted tactical processors that let him predict enemy movements. She paused, but the real change was not physical. Then what? They removed his limiters, the psychological barriers that stop normal people from pushing beyond human endurance. Pain, fear, exhaustion, self-preservation. Hayes pulled up Jake's medical file. The enhancements were listed in clinical detail. A normal human will collapse before they damage their own body. Jake Morrison can push until his muscles tear and his bones crack, and he will keep moving. Vela read the file, saw the list of modifications, saw the survival statistics. 47 operatives entered Project Titan. 12 survived the augmentation process. Of those 12, only 3 remained alive after 5 years of active deployment. Jake Morrison was one of them. Why did he accept this? Hayes closed the file. Same reason any soldier accepts a dangerous assignment. Someone needed to do it, and he was willing. The communication array sparked to life. Not Jake's voice this time. Zinthari battle language, harsh and guttural. The translation scrolled across the screen. Unidentified fighter, you are in violation of Zinthari military space. Identify yourself or be destroyed. Jake's response came in perfect Zinthari. Vela's translator rendered it into her native tongue. I am Commander Jake Morrison of Earth. You attacked a diplomatic vessel under treaty protection. You attempted to assassinate Queen Vela of the Corvith Empire. You broke the peace accords. A pause. I am here to file a formal complaint. Silence from the Zinthari. Then their weapons opened fire. The tactical display showed the Dreadmaw's point defense systems activating. Hundreds of plasma turrets tracking the single incoming fighter. The probability calculations scrolled past. 0.03% survival rate. Jake's fighter jinked left. Plasma bolts filled the space where it had been. He rolled, inverted, and dove. More fire. More impossible evasion. Vela gripped the edge of the tactical station. He cannot possibly... Jake's fighter weaved through the defensive fire like a needle through cloth. Every movement precise. Every dodge calculated. The tactical processors Hayes had mentioned were working overtime, predicting firing patterns, exploiting gaps in coverage. He reached the Dreadmaw's outer hull. The fighter's weapons were damaged, non-functional. So Jake did something else. He crashed. The fighter slammed into the carrier's hangar bay at full speed. The impact tore through magnetic shields and blast doors. The explosion bloomed across the tactical display. Hayes leaned forward. Sensors. Life signs. The scanning officer worked his controls. Negative. Too much interference from the blast. If he survived that impact, he did. Vela said it with certainty, with something that felt like faith. He survived. 60 seconds passed. The Dreadmaw's internal alarms were visible as electromagnetic signatures. Chaos spreading through the massive vessel. Then the carrier's main reactor spiked. Hayes's eyes widened. He is going for the reactor core. The Midway was still 8 minutes out. Too far, too slow. On the tactical display, secondary explosions rippled through the Dreadmaw. Power fluctuations, atmosphere venting. The carrier was dying from the inside. Vela watched the data stream. Somewhere in that massive ship, her husband was moving through corridors, fighting, killing, pushing toward the reactor with single-minded purpose. The Zinthari would have thousands of soldiers aboard, security teams, elite guards, every advantage. It did not matter. Jake Morrison was not trying to survive. He was trying to send a message. The reactor's containment fields collapsed. The Dreadmaw disappeared in a sphere of nuclear fire. The blast wave expanded, consumed 3 escort frigates that were too close. The shock wave rattled the Midway even at 8 light minutes distance. Hayes stared at the empty space where the carrier had been, scanned for debris, life pods, anything. The sensors swept the area, found wreckage, found bodies, found nothing alive. Vela turned away from the display. Her hands were steady now. Her face was calm. But inside, something had broken and reformed into something harder. Captain Hayes, I am returning to Corvus space. I will gather my fleets. Your Majesty, my husband just declared war on the Zinthari, alone, unarmed, wounded. Vela met Hayes's eyes. I will not let his death be meaningless. The Korvath Armada will join Earth's forces. We will finish what he started. Hayes nodded slowly. The Zinthari will regret the day they broke the peace. No. Vela's voice was cold. They will not live long enough for regrets. The Korvath homeworld appeared on the view screen 3 days later. Vela stood in the shuttle as it descended through silver clouds toward the crystalline spires of the capital. She had left as a queen bound by treaty. She returned as a widow with a declaration of war. The royal council waited in the throne room. 12 elder Korvath, scales dimmed with age, eyes sharp with political cunning. They had opposed the marriage to a human, had called it weakness, surrender disguised as diplomacy. Now they would learn the cost of their prejudice. Vela entered without ceremony. Her torn dress had been replaced with battle armor. Traditional Korvath warplate, black metal etched with the symbols of her bloodline. The council members shifted uncomfortably. My queen, the eldest counselor began, we received word of the attack. The loss of the human commander is unfortunate, but his name was Jake Morrison. Vela's voice cut like a blade. And his loss is not unfortunate. It is unacceptable. She activated the holographic projector. Footage played. Jake pulling the launch lever. Jake fighting in the pod bay. Jake surviving hard vacuum. Jake stealing the fighter. Jake destroying the Dreadmaw. The council watched in silence. When the footage ended, Vela spoke. The Zinthari declared war on both our species. They attempted to murder me. They did murder my husband. I am calling the Armada to active duty. Every ship, every soldier. We march with Earth. Your Majesty, this is madness, another counselor protested. The Zinthari fleet outnumbers our combined forces 3-1. The humans are warlike, yes, but even they cannot. The humans sent one man to protect me. One. Vela gestured at the frozen image of Jake facing the Zinthari soldiers. He killed 47 enemy combatants, survived exposure to vacuum, stole an enemy craft, destroyed their command carrier and everyone aboard. Her violet eyes blazed. Now imagine what they can do with an entire fleet. The counselor fell silent. We vote, the eldest said. Tradition demands. I am not asking for a vote. Vela's hand dropped to her plasma sword. I am telling you what will happen. The Armada launches in 6 hours. Any counselor who objects can explain their reasoning to my blade. No one objected. Vela left the throne room and made her way to the communications array. She opened a channel to the midway. Captain Hayes appeared on the screen. "Your Majesty, the Korvath have agreed. They have been persuaded. Our forces will rendezvous with yours at the coordinates you provided." Vela hesitated. "Have you found any trace of him?" Hayes's expression softened. "No. The Dreadmaw was completely destroyed. If Jake was still aboard when the reactor went critical, she did not finish." Vela nodded. She had known, had accepted, but some small part of her had hoped. "Captain, when we engage the Zinthari, I want to lead the assault personally. Your fleet needs you alive. My husband died for me. I will not command from safety while others fight in my name." Vela's hand tightened on her sword. "This is not negotiable." Hayes studied her for a long moment, then smiled. "Jake would be proud of you." The channel closed. 6 hours later, the Korvath Armada rose from a dozen moons. 400 warships, enough firepower to crack planets. They joined with Earth's fleet at the border. Another 600 vessels, human engineering, human weapons, human fury. Admiral Carter commanded the combined forces from the dreadnought Valiant. He was older than Hayes, battle-scarred. He had fought in the Proxima campaign alongside Jake Morrison. When Vela came aboard to coordinate strategy, he greeted her with a salute. "Your Majesty, Commander Morrison spoke highly of you. He barely knew me. He knew you well enough to die for you." Carter pulled up the tactical display. "The Zinthari are fortifying their core systems. They expect us to wage a defensive war, protect our borders, react to their moves. What do you propose?" "We burn their empire to ash." Carter highlighted a dozen systems deep in Zinthari space. "These are their shipyards, their fuel depots, their food production centers. We strike here, all at once. Overwhelming force." Vela studied the map. "That leaves our own borders exposed." "Yes, and the Zinthari will exploit that. They will send raiding fleets to attack our colonies while we are committed." Carter met her eyes. "People will die. Civilians. The Zinthari will make us pay for every system we take from them." "Then why suggest it?" "Because Jake Morrison taught me something during Proxima. Sometimes the only way to end a war quickly is to make it so terrible that the enemy begs for peace." Carter zoomed in on a planet marked in red. "This is Zinthar Prime, their homeworld. If we can reach it, we can force a surrender." Vela looked at the planet, at the fortress moon orbiting it, at the fleet strength indicators showing impossible odds. "How many ships would we lose?" 40%, maybe more. "And if we succeed, the war ends in weeks instead of years. Millions of lives saved on both sides." Carter paused. "It is what Jake would have wanted." Vela thought about her husband, about 3 months of careful distance, about his smile in the pod bay, about his promise to see her again. "Admiral, launch the offensive. All ships, maximum aggression." "Understood, Your Majesty." The combined fleet jumped to hyperspace. 1,000 warships burning toward the heart of the Zinthari Empire. 3 days into the campaign, they hit the first shipyard. The battle was brutal. Human railguns against Zinthari plasma lances. Korvath fighters weaving through defensive fire. The shipyard died in nuclear fire, but took 18 vessels with it. The second target went easier. The Zinthari had not repositioned their defenses in time. By the fourth target, the enemy was waiting. The Battle of Kelros Station became legend. 200 ships on each side. The fighting lasted 11 hours. When it ended, the station was rubble, and both fleets were shattered. Vela commanded from the bridge of her flagship. She watched her people die, watched human crews sacrifice themselves to protect Corvith vessels, watched the Zinthari fight with desperate fury, and she thought about Jake, about what he had endured, about the augmentations that let him push past human limits, about the price he paid for that power. Your Majesty. Her tactical officer's voice was urgent. Unknown contact, single ship, moving fast, very fast. Vela pulled up the sensor data. A small craft, moving at speeds that should tear it apart, coming from deep space. No transponder, no identification. Weapons status? The craft is not armed, or if it is, weapons are powered down. The mysterious ship burned straight through the battle, ignored both fleets. Zinthari vessels fired on it. Missed every shot. The craft reached the station's wreckage and dove into the debris field. Then it transmitted. The voice that came through was broken, distorted, but unmistakable. Vela, I am coming home. Her hands gripped the command console. Her heart hammered in her chest. Jake Morrison was alive. The mysterious craft emerged from the debris field and burned toward Vela's flagship. Behind it, the Zinthari fleet broke formation. They knew that signature now, knew what it meant. Vela ran to the hangar bay. Her guards struggled to keep pace. She reached the landing platform as the craft touched down. Steam hissed, metal groaned. The hull was scorched black and pitted with impacts. The canopy opened. Jake Morrison climbed out. He was barely recognizable. Burns covered half his face. His left arm hung useless. Cybernetic implants showed through torn skin. Blood seeped from a dozen wounds. But he was standing, moving, alive. Vela crossed the distance between them in 3 strides and stopped. Unsure. They had been strangers 3 months ago. Husband and wife by treaty only. Jake solved the problem by collapsing. She caught him before he hit the deck. Her strength surprised him. He looked up at her and smiled through broken teeth. Told you I would see you again. You died. I watched you die. Got better. He coughed. Blood flecked his lips. The Dreadmaw's emergency pods. Grabbed one before the reactor blew. Spent 3 days drifting. Another 2 repairing a salvaged fighter. He touched her face with his good hand. Had to get back. Had to make sure you were safe. Medical teams surrounded them. They loaded Jake onto a stretcher. Vela walked beside him as they rushed toward the medical bay. Your injuries are severe, the lead physician said. We need to put you in stasis immediately. No. Jake grabbed Vela's hand. Need to tell her something first. The physician looked at Vela. She nodded. They were left alone in the medical bay. Machines hummed. Monitors tracked Jake's failing vitals. The augmentations are breaking down, he said quietly. Pushed too hard, too long. My body is rejecting the implants. Vela's chest tightened. Can they repair you? Maybe, if we had time. If we were not in the middle of a war zone. Jake's grip on her hand was weak. But I need you to know something. These 3 months, living with you, learning about your culture, your people. He paused. It was not duty anymore. Somewhere along the way, it became real. Jake, let me finish. Please. He took a shaky breath. I died for you because I wanted to. Because losing you would have hurt worse than any weapon. And if I die now, I die knowing that I married someone worth dying for. Vela felt wetness on her face, tears. She had not cried since childhood. You are not allowed to die. I forbid it. Jake laughed. It turned into a cough. Queens do not get to order death around. Then I am asking, as your wife, stay with me. He squeezed her hand. "I will try." The physician returned with Captain Hayes. The captain took one look at Jake, and her expression went cold. "How bad?" "Catastrophic system failure. He needs a full regeneration chamber. Earth has 3. Korvath has none. Nearest Earth facility is 6 jumps away," Hayes said. "He will not survive the trip." Jake closed his eyes. "Then I die here. Not the worst place." "No." Vela stood. "There is another option. Korvath regeneration technology is different from human, but our royal chambers can sustain life indefinitely, repair biological damage. Will they work on augmented humans? I do not know, but it is better than watching him die." They moved Jake to the Royal Medical Wing. The regeneration chamber was ancient, crystal and metal fused by techniques lost centuries ago. Vela activated the systems herself. Biofluid filled the chamber. Jake floated in suspension, his vitals stabilized. Then improved. "It is working," the physician said with surprise. Vela placed her hand on the crystal. "How long?" "Days, maybe weeks. His injuries are extensive. The augmentations complicate everything. He has weeks. He has as long as he needs." Vela returned to the bridge. The battle for Kelros Station was over. Both fleets had withdrawn. The cost had been terrible, but they had won. Admiral Carter's face appeared on the screen. "Your Majesty, we received word that Commander Morrison is alive. That is good news in dark times. He is in regeneration. Unstable. Understood." Meanwhile, our scouts have located the main Zinthari fleet. They are massing at Zinthar Prime. Every ship they have left. This will be the final battle. Vela looked at the tactical projection. The enemy fleet was massive. The combined human and Korvath forces were battered, exhausted. "How long until we can engage?" 48 hours. "We need time to regroup. Repair critical systems." "Do it. And, Admiral?" Vela's voice was steel. "We end this. For every person who died, for every ship we lost, we end this." "Agreed, Your Majesty." 48 hours later, the combined fleet jumped into Zinthar Prime's system. The Zinthari were waiting, 1,000 ships against their 700. The battle began with a missile exchange that lit the void like a second sun. Then the fleets closed. Railguns hammered shields. Plasma lances cut through hulls. Fighters swarmed like angry insects. Vela commanded from the bridge. Beside her, the medical officer monitored Jake's chamber remotely. "His vitals are spiking," the officer said. "The chamber is accelerating his healing." "How much longer?" "But," the officer stopped, stared at the readings. "This is impossible. His cellular regeneration is exceeding normal parameters." "The chamber is not just healing him. It is adapting to his augmentations, enhancing them." On the main screen, the battle intensified. 3 human dreadnoughts broke through the Zinthari line. The enemy flagship Eternal Wrath turned to engage. Then the medical officer shouted, "He is awake!" Vela spun. On the monitor, Jake's eyes had opened inside the chamber. The biofluid drained. The crystal opened. Jake Morrison stepped out. His wounds were gone. His augmentations glowed with new power. His eyes had changed. Still human, but something more. He looked at the camera, looked at Vela across the ship, and smiled. "Get me to a fighter." 10 minutes later, a single Korvath interceptor launched from Vela's flagship. Jake was at the controls. He burned toward the Eternal Wrath at impossible speed. The Zinthari concentrated fire on him. hundreds of weapons. He dodged them all. He reached the enemy flagship and did not slow down, did not fire weapons. He rammed straight through the bridge at full speed. The interceptor exploded. The Eternal Wrath's command deck disintegrated, but from the wreckage, a figure emerged. Jake Morrison, in vacuum, no suit, moving through space like he was born to it. The Korvath regeneration chamber had changed him, made him something beyond human, beyond augmentation. He landed on another Zindari vessel and tore through the hull with his bare hands. The enemy fleet broke. Ships turned and ran. The battle became a rout. When it ended, Jake returned to Vela's flagship. She met him in the hangar bay. He was covered in scoring and damage, but alive. Grinning, she walked to him, looked up at the impossible man she had married. "You are a fool. I am your fool." Vela grabbed his armor and pulled him down, kissed him, long and fierce. When they broke apart, her eyes were wet again. 3 months ago, you were a stranger, a political arrangement. And now? Now you are my husband, truly. And the Synthari will remember the day they tried to kill you. Jake pulled her close. Around them, the fleet celebrated victory. Above them, stars shone cold and endless. The war was over, the peace was won. And humanity had shown the galaxy exactly what they were capable of when someone threatened their own.